Yeah, I think we could probably go ahead and get started. I'm just going to
All right.
introduce myself real quick. So I am Sean Brakefield, the creator and developer of Infinite Painter, the app that's going to be being demoed today. And I'm here with Peter Sakievich, and he is going to he's just a killer artist we found on Instagram. And had such an honor doing a commission with him earlier this year. If you haven't seen our banner, he did the ship for that in perspective. Yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited to see him, doing his work here. So, I'm going to let you take it over, Peter. If you guys have any questions from the chat, I will be glad to answer. Yep.
All right. So there's that chip. Yeah, so for those that follow me on Instagram, I did a little live streamer this week doing the sketches here. And the way that I like to start these is with silhouettes, which is kind of a classic way. So when I sat down, I just kind of drew out these silhouettes. And depending on kind of what you're trying to do, can inform this a lot. So if you've got a certain design language, so certain kinds of shapes or features you're using, or if you have specific requirements from a client or something like that, that can make a big difference as to what kind of silhouettes you do. But if you're just doing kind of whatever, that's up to you. But so I did some silhouettes, and then I did a little bit of rough sketching on top of those. So you go through and you just kind of do a quick little gestures and details. And again, that often depends on what you're trying to get done. And then from there, I do another layer of a little bit more detailing just to kind of polish things off a little bit. And that's usually kind of enough information for me to get started. So that's kind of what I did. So I think I'm going to do this one right there and go from that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a selection tool. Grab that. And what's nice to have this copy merged thing in here. If I can copy that, duplicate to a new layer, and hide these other ones. And what I love about working on the iPad is just it makes a lot of things so much easier. So it's all kind of right there. You don't have to dig into menus and like I have a big 27-inch Cintiq, and sometimes that's a lot of real estate to move around on. But again, what's really great with the iPad is all kind of right there and immediate for me. And just don't hesitate to ask any questions if you have them. But that's how I more or less get it set up. So I'll copy it, put it in the right spot, resize it depending on the type of drawing it is, and go from there. So the next thing I would want to do here is get our perspective set up. So I can come over here and I can find they have the different perspective layouts, including isometric, regular grids, curved linear, but we're going to go with 3-point perspective. And just pull out, and then there's the tools for moving it around. So I can take these and kind of find my general layout. So looking for alignments. So over here on the left and over here on the right, trying to make sure certain things kind of line up to start with. And that makes it a lot easier. So I can see kind of it's lined up going to the right and left, downward a little bit with the ship. I can see the wings are kind of lined up. And so that's really, really helpful to get me going. Maybe we'll spread it out just a little bit more. And 3-point's really great for kind of showing off more sides because it kind of warps the view a bit so that you kind of see a little bit more pretty often.
Nice. Do you find yourself mostly working in the 3-point perspective, or do you sometimes jump into 2-point?
For this kind of stuff, I mostly use the 3-point. Part of the reason is, when you're trying to do like a concept piece like this, you want to make it a little bit more exciting.
Yeah.
And 3-point's always good for that.
Nice.
It just has that extra bit of dynamic aspect to it. Yeah, I think I was commenting to you just before we got started, but it's always funny when I go do a lot of stuff on my iPad, then I switch over to a computer. I often end up poking at the computer, tapping at it.
That's
It doesn't
hilarious.
do that.
What's funny is actually I do that with paper sometimes. When I actually, I used to working on the iPad so much, I try to zoom into the paper. It's like, it's hilarious.
I've done that. Actually, the first time I did it was with the iPhone 3G. I had used it for a week, and I hadn't had my computer available. I hadn't had internet, so I was using my phone for everything. And then they finally got our computer up, our internet up and going, and I kept poking at my computer monitor.
Oh wow.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting change. So after I kind of get it set up, got a number of brushes that I've made and favorited in here, but I'll probably grab this one. A lot of times I get a lot of questions about brushes, especially one like this, which I always find entertaining. So this brush right here, it's just a basic round brush with a little bit of opacity on it, but people always want to know about it. I should sell it as a brush set or something. But so when I first look at an object like this, I want to make sure that I'm thinking about it dimensionally. So what we do is we break things into primitives, and that's something I teach at the school that I teach at Ringling. Is we spend a lot of time breaking things into simple primitives. So what the primitives are, the most basic one is like a cube or a box. Pyramids, cylinders, spheres, wedges, those kinds of things. And those are really, really helpful because, for me, it's really hard to just draw a whole bunch of details and hope that they work out just right. And so it's a lot easier for me to look at something and kind of break it into its primitives, and that helps me draw it a lot better too. So I can look at this, and I want to make sure it works as perspective because I just rough sketch it. So if I look at this, front part, this is going to be a cylinder. This is kind of a modified cylinder right here. So I want to be able to see it in the round and not just as a detailed shape. So it has a lot more dimension that way to me. It lets me see through the drawing too, so I can look through it. I can imagine it almost like an X-ray picture, and I can see through the whole thing. So it gives me a really good sense of its depth. So I can look here and say, oh, okay, I've got this little wing right here. So I can look through to the other side and say, oh, maybe it's got to be right about there. So maybe I'm not going to see it. Or if I make it a little bit longer here and a little bit longer there, I can see it. Same thing with these wings over here. I can say, okay, there's this wing here going this way, and this is like a large plane, so a flat surface like a floor. And then it's easier for me then to break it up into its important pieces, see how it connects on the other side, and then connect it again on the other side where it's similar with the side that I see more of. Same thing with these other elements. So like there's this fin. So if I treat this fin just as a regular flat plane, then I can see what's going on. I can wrap the other forms around it.
Nice. Do you feel like you sometimes get constricted by focusing heavily on primitives, or do you just feel like it kind of just builds up that foundation to where you get more freedom in the long run?
It helps me see how it actually fits together, because I don't stay with this. I'll draw it. I'll keep my thumbnail there with all the detail on it. But it helps me kind of straighten things out. It helps me see how it fits together, and then that actually it just makes everything a lot easier for me to do. So I don't really find it constricting at all.
Nice.
And it's something my students just spent the last 2 weeks doing, was breaking things down into their primitives and then building them up again. So it's something I torment other people with too. But if you think of it in primitives, it also helps me pay attention to things like the ellipses, so a circle in perspective. So if I want a cylinder going this way, I've got to make sure that the minor axis of an ellipse is angled with the direction of the overall form. So if I wanted to go that way, it's got to go that way. If I wanted to go down, it's got to be angled with the angles going down. So make sure it looks like it's going down. If I flip it, if I wanted to do an ellipse this way, if I flip it the wrong way, if I go this way instead, it just looks weird, right? It looks like it's been squashed. So
and that minor axis, it always snaps towards that vanishing point. Is that pretty accurate as long as it's like in line?
But yeah, it feels like it's pretty accurate. So it kind of gets that angle and then it moves along with it.
Yeah. So we had one question come in. It said, did you have these primitives in mind when you did the sketches? And same question about the perspective, or were the sketches mostly just random? And then you're like working off those sketches, you're breaking down the sketches for the primitive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So if we go back and we look at these drawings, they're not lined up with this perspective at all. So I didn't have this out while I was working on them. You could do that. But I was just focusing a lot more initially on their shapes. So the flat 2D shapes. And then I could look there and say, well, maybe it's something angled this way. So I have to kind of put it in my head first.
That's actually such a great technique, is like just allowing those silhouettes to kind of imagine what's in them. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's something I picked up actually a very long time ago. There's a book called The Skillful Huntsman, which I think is it's one of the best books on concept art and design, I think, still out there.
Oh, nice. I'll check that out.
They emphasize silhouette drawing a lot. It was Scott Robertson, who's done a number of books on concept stuff, used to teach at Art Center.
Yep. I was actually going to mention his book too when you were talking about ellipses, because he like goes through perspective breakdown and ellipses pretty heavily in his How to Draw book, if you guys are interested too. Yep.
It's a great kind of classic tome on that. I guess he's retired now, but it's just a really great resource. So it's kind of quick version. And then what I'd want to do after this, after seeing kind of those forms, I start looking at what I call the rough layer, which is where I kind of go in and I sketch in details, but I'm just doing it roughly. So I know I've got certain features going on, like I've got this front part right here. Let's make that smaller. Too small. And I want to, pay attention to that. I've got these other surrounding elements. I want to start paying attention to those. And this is where I kind of play around with a lot of the kind of the more finished details. What's going to happen? I'm not going to be too specific, but it's kind of the little phase here. So I've got the structure built up so that I can use that as a guide. And then this can be where I start playing around with some of the initial ideas I had from the smaller sketches.
Nice.
So another good thing to look for is a midline on things. So this is like the middle of the front. That way it helps me kind of balance across the sides. Straight line tool is always nice. That's angled, but I want the other one to line up with the perspective, so I can switch that to the magnet. And that's another thing I like to do in this rough phase, is kind of tweak the perspective, so make sure it's a bit more on point.
Nice. Yeah, I'll point that out for others that might not be able to see that too. Is in the top right where you have your perspective, there's like a little like tool hint bar, and there's two icons. One is the magnet, which allows you to snap in perspective or like basically draw freely while maintaining the perspective grid. And the other one allows you, beside it, allows you to turn off the visibility of that grid. So, yep.
Yeah, it's really handy to have that there because it simplifies my life.
So we have another question come through that said, how do I know my drawing is in the right perspective? Sometimes I do the drawing, it gets distorted. So I always have a feeling that it's wrong. Do you have any recommendations?
So I've been telling my students all these first weeks of school, they need to learn to think inside the box. So no matter what you're drawing, if you can put a box around it, you can see the perspective. So
Oh yeah, okay. Like you're
thinking
basically
inside the box is the new thinking outside the box. So if you want to build something like, say, a face, and you can put it in a box, and you can construct it in there. You know, the ear's got to be here. There's be an ear on the other side that you can't see. And the cranium's there, and you can start breaking things down until you've got, you know, a head, shoulders.
Nice. I like that. I like that saying too. Think inside the box. That's nice.
So yeah, it's because you know it's a lot easier. I think as I was commenting earlier, it's a lot easier for me to draw a box than it is for me to draw a whole spaceship all at once.
Yeah.
So if I can do that, and anybody I think can draw a box.
So yeah, guys, I'll point out another feature that Peter's using right now is he's dragging out the stroke that he wants, and then he's just holding for a second. And then so it basically simplifies that into a shape. And what you can do after the fact is you can actually tap that shape, for example, that arc, and then it becomes editable, like you can see there. And then if you just tap away or draw the next stroke, then it'll set to the canvas.
It's cheating. Yeah, it's really nice about this one is it's you know really convenient because it's right there with the strokes. You don't have to look for another spot in a menu to adjust it. It's just kind of right there.
Nice. We had another question come in. It said, how did you find out what art fields you wanted to work in?
I'm still working on that, I guess. So you know, mostly professionally I've done is concept art. And so when I was graduating from my illustration program, that was a big new thing for a lot of people to go into. And so that was really exciting. You know, my professors are more from like doing book covers or editorial, so magazine illustrations, that kind of thing. And so that's what they knew about. So none of them really knew anything about concept stuff because no one cared about it as a profession back then. That wasn't that long ago, you know, like in the mid 2000s. But but back then, if you could show you could do a good figure drawing, then you could get a good job as a concept artist. And now you got to be really good at a lot other things, not just the basic drawing skills. But yeah, I saw that. I was like, well, that's really cool. I can work on movies and games and draw their, you know, come up with ideas for all things that show up on those things. You know, because I like, you know, movies and I like video games and all that fun stuff. So there's a lot of art of books that started coming out back then too. So it's like the Lord of the Rings art of books, the prequels for Star Wars, in spite of their individual qualities. That wing should be a little bit longer, but the art books were incredible. So I was very excited by that.
So we had a more technical question here in the chat. I'll just answer real quick. So is this compatible with Photoshop? So yeah, so the program can export to PSD format. So this is actually a program that is for Android, Mac M1s, as well as iPads, iPhones, and Chromebooks. So you can, you can do a lot in the program and then bring it into Photoshop and you know, do what you need in that as well. And so it's totally awesome when we see combo workflows like that.
Yeah, I think the only format that Adobe's picky about at all is their AI format for Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah.
That's the only one that people can't export to, but that's just if you're doing vectors, which we're not doing. So
yeah, we have another product, you know, we're not doing here at Lightbox, Infinite Design, that focuses on vector-based workflows. And yeah, trying to support, that's a big question we get a lot, is how can we support AI in that? And so, we have to use the kind of the SVG approach, but yeah, it's a bit frustrating, so to say the least.
Thankfully, they didn't get to do that with PSDs. But question: so you are in the industry when you are asked to design a ship. What are they like expecting? It depends. Variations.
So there was one question here from that asked, how do you have any advice on how to get proportions right in perspective? And I think that kind of plays off maybe your how to draw in a box. It also might play off of like some of the techniques about dividing like rectangle or squares in space and things like that. I'm just curious on if you have any good advice for that too. There was a question in chat.
Yeah, so I haven't been too picky about this. Like I can find out exactly how far away that wing should be. And most I'm doing it by eye right now.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to be really picky, I can draw this line across, right? I can draw this line here, go across, and that gets me a rectangle in perspective. So once I have a rectangle, and it can be a perfect square, it can be a rectangle, just as long as it has right angles in perspective. Once I have that, then if I go here from corner to corner, here corner to corner, you can also count the number of boxes, if you've got it split up that way. And then once I have that, yeah, because you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, however many wide, right? But once I have that, then I've got this. So I put the perspective back on, and so that's the dead center between the two, from this side to this side. So looking at that, maybe the wing should be a little bit shorter. So like the center of this part, through here, is like right about there. So that would just be making the wing like that much shorter on the other side, I think. But yeah, so learning to be able to subdivide boxes is a really useful skill. And you can actually subdivide boxes into halves, thirds, and fifths if you want to play that game.
Nice.
So, but yeah, so pretty easy. But if something you've never seen before, it's it's like, oh, once you know it, it makes a lot of other things so much simpler. And part of that's learning to see through, so seeing that arc across there, and so I can see, oh, okay, this width right here, halfway there, and then that would show me the halfway point through the center of the vehicle. And you'll often see that people that are doing ship designs, they'll draw kind of like these lines that show those divisions. It makes it a little bit easier for them to do the rough sketch. So you got about half hour, so maybe we'll jump into some the details. So I've been doing these mostly kind of with this kind of flat pen. So it treats it almost like a micron style pen. So one of the things I like to do at this point is to kind of make sure I find all the lines that are generally going to line up with the perspective. And so I can turn that magnet back on. It's going to work with the grid. You can hide the grid too, right? No, I just turned it off. Back on there. There we go. If I can just kind of drop in some of these straight lines.
Cool. We have a few suggestions here on some details.
Okay.
I'll throw out to you. Maybe some cool sharp shapes as windows. A thick metal plate on the upper part, of the front of the ship, or how about panel lines access?
Okay. Yeah, so we'll put some access ports and some panels and some of the details up here.
Cool.
So let's find that little straight line there and that one there. Go ahead and pretend we can see that.
Massive death ray.
Well, that's what that is, right? I guess maybe could be.
Yeah, I like it.
So let's turn that magnet off. That's most of the straights up here. Let's see, circle tool. Oh, there it is.
And then have that lock on with perspective. Sorry. Sorry, what you have snapping on.
Oh. Whoa, that's interesting.
So if you pull towards that top right, actually pull back to the center,
Go.
and then pull towards that top right, actually. Let's see.
There we
Yeah,
go.
right there.
Oh, I hadn't tried that one.
Yeah, no, it was the suggestion, but yeah, so this is a technique, guys. So in the app, our shape tools can snap to the perspective planes that you pull towards. So both the ellipse tool, the circle shape, and then also the rectangle as well. So if you're like laying out, for example, planes or walls, or if you're trying to do, for example, like right here, very circular shapes, or if you're doing rims on a car, for example, then it's a good tool to it does it like strictly accurately. So like in some cases it might kind of not be the best fit for your design, but it's definitely a suggestion that might be helpful. So.
Yeah, that's really handy. I haven't tried it that way before. Not that one we want.
I like how you like basically have like the fundamental of your design, and now you're just kind of like playing with the details and really just kind of fleshing everything out.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I like doing the primitives and the rough. I kind of have a little process I go through, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but a lot of like I'll find a lot of times with my students or people I talk to on live streams and that they kind of always want to skip to the end right away, and it actually is a lot faster and easier and I think more fun to kind of go through those little steps.
Yeah.
And for those that want to get into more professional markets, actually working for companies or whatever, it's good to have those because that's a good way of communicating with the client what your plan is for your drawing, so they can say yes or no, or get things all organized so they know what they're getting and you know what to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's really great advice, especially when you're working with clients. It makes a lot of sense because you're not spending so much time on a piece, really heavily invested. They have a chance to kind of jump in and kind of say, that might be, let's maybe like go a little bit in a different direction here or something of that nature.
Yeah, you don't go too far from what they need.
Yeah, nice.
I like to start with kind of these thinner lines and then go back and put in some heavier ones for emphasis.
Nice.
So like if I were working strictly on this area, the next step would be to maybe bump up the thickness, and then some of these exterior ones would get a little extra.
That's actually, yeah, I've seen this technique a lot in a way of kind of bringing attention or bringing depth. Do you have any recommendation on when to like change the line weight in these designs?
Actually, I do. So one of the things principles of design is contrast, right? Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So a heavier line, around thinner lines is going to have a lot of contrast. So anything that has contrast catches the eye more quickly. So it's something you see and you perceive it as being closer. So usually you want to have lines that are closer to be heavier if you're trying to show space with it. There's other kind of reasons for doing things too, but that's one of the big reasons, just to show that. So a lot of times they'll put, if I were to draw, say, the other wing on the other side, that one I would draw much more thinly than the one in front. So it kind of pushes that one back. It's still there, but it doesn't have the same level of detail. So it shows that things being forward. Another thing is for overlapping. So, if you draw some kind of form here, and then you intersect it with another form, it's, which one's in front? I don't know, right? So even if they were transparent, by making one a little bit more have more contrast, it pulls it in front.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. That's a really great tip coming into Inktober, guys. Remember, line weight can help create depth.
And then the other thing it does is it can also show kind of form a little bit by weighting lines that are facing down heavier. So if I were doing this, I could come back and I could weight the lines on the bottom edge of a surface compared with the top edge, and it kind of adds a little bit of weight to that bottom, so it makes it kind of feel like it's got a little bit of shadow on it, even if it doesn't really. And then the other one is kind of using this line weight stuff to break things up. So if I were to erase this out, of course, it's going to sit on top. But if I had drawn, let's see, we got depth on there. So if I had drawn this the same line weight with it on top, obviously overlapping helps. But I can also do is break the line as it passes behind. And that pulls it in front, even if they have the same line weight.
Oh, nice.
And so you can, mix these things up together and contrast them, but it's just kind of a basic little subset of tools that make adding a little bit of depth to things easier.
Yeah, I like that technique a lot, actually, because I think some people feel like you have to have everything connected, but you can obviously not connect it, and it has a utility, right?
Yeah. So the level of detail for greebles. Well, if I were just to go pull up, but if you go look at this one, lots of greebles going on here. Little pipes and sensors and things.
Just love this piece. It's beautiful. Also in this piece, I love the glow on the window on this left side. It's just awesome.
Yes,
I love that.
A little reflected light never hurt anybody.
Yeah, that's just awesome.
So yeah, I'm definitely a sucker for this. Part of that, growing up with Star Wars, right? So just the front edge of the Millennium Falcon or things like that, where they shoved a bunch of random stuff in there, kind of makes it more fun to look at. But I have plans for stuff, say back here, up here in the front, and then have that again contrast. So have some areas that are more kind of flat and smooth, contrasted with areas that have a lot more stuff going on.
So good question here. This actually kind of combines with the question, I think, a little bit earlier, but so is there a stage you don't like doing? Like, for an example, coloring stage or lining stage? What do you do to keep it from making you lose interest from finishing your current project?
So I like all the stages. I like the quick sketches. I like, the rough stage of kind of playing around with the detail. I like the finishing stage. And so I'm just kind of building them into each other. So I'm always looking forward to them personally. But I know some people kind of get tired. I think part of it is just that, for me, when I'm looking at this, I'm kind of telling myself, the story of it. So, why is this thing here? Why is this thing over here? What possibility is drawing this other thing going to open up over there? And so, it's not just like, the actual narrative, this comes from, Planet Greeble and, it's here on a mission, but like, how do things kind of fit together and work together? So I really enjoy that whole process. And so each stage is just kind of me exploring it. Sometimes I get to a point where I can't tell what I should do, and that's usually where I'll let it sit for a couple of days or a day or whatever, sleep on it. So that's a little bit different. So yeah, I don't tend to lose a lot of interest if I'm working on for a really long time, but then I'll just take a break, come back to it.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like this this overall message of focusing on your foundation, and once you get that right, you have a lot of freedom. That has come up with a few of the presentations that we've done this weekend with a few other artists, kind of across different styles. And because it seems like you have so much freedom right here to kind of play around with detail, and knowing that the overall form is gonna still kind of stay intact.
Yeah, you're not fighting yourself.
Yeah.
And
one person brought up thought you had to connect all lines so you don't have bleed out when rendering shapes.
is that maybe like if you're like doing fill shapes or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of applies with some of the limits with with the fill bucket and things like that. I think one
Okay.
technique I've seen you use, and you could probably elaborate on this, is like basically creating a kind of a silhouette of that final line art, and then just working on that. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, so what I do is I'll take, say the selection tool up here, and I learned this in my first kind of studio job, but you kind of curve it out and then you let where it's going to snap be the straight line. And
Yeah.
so you can kind of fill in large areas like that. And so I'll just create a large flat shape like this to be the main element. I probably should rely more on those fill tools, but sometimes I get stuck in my ways.
Yeah, no, I think this is also a great technique, because once you have that kind of outline silhouette, you can always go back to it and then work off that or reselect it to be able to kind of clip what you want to do. Yeah, I think this is a great technique.
So a lot of times I'll even just save a layer that is that shape all by itself, just so I always have it and can come back to it. It's kind of satisfying too to watch the little thing snap around.
Nice.
Like, sweet. But let's see, let's clear that. But that's how I usually do it. But again, there are those tools, and then usually some of them will have features that they can kind of detect the distance, and you can play around with settings. But I for these kinds of line drawings, I tend to keep it pretty basic like that.
So I think I don't know if this is exactly a question. It sounds more like a statement, but it says that shape fill works a bit like what Vaughn Ling was doing. So I will point out, I don't understand this reference fully, but I will point out you're using the lasso selection. One other feature in Infinite Painter is that we actually have what are called fill brushes, which are basically like lasso fill brushes. You can do it with like a solid fill, you can do it with screen tone, or you can also do it with texture to like quickly kind of sculpt out your design. So this is really great, for example, at that silhouette stage, or like if you're just trying to get the forms, then you can kind of like quickly just bring in texture, or with solid fill, for example, you can just like kind of wrap around on a separate layer what that fill would be. So yep.
Like that. Yeah, I think I was playing around with those the other day. Grunge texture.
And then I think we had one more question real quick. Sorry.
That's fine.
So how would you render this once you like finish the line art stage? How would you render this?
So once we have the line art done, I can show you that over here because this one's all the way done. Could just be the size, but so you see I've got all these layers over here on the right, and I think this is a touch-up layer here. So here's like this is the background tone, and then if we go through, what I've done is I've kind of used render layers to do this whole thing. I don't have them all named here, but basically there's like a shadow layer, and things work really well with that. If the form is really clear, then that's a really good sign for me to kind of move forward with it. This is just flat colors. That's what it looks like without any of the light on it. Then I kind of go through and turn on the lights. So there's the shadow, there's the light source, here's the kind of reflected light going on, and some of the other bounce lights around it. There's some line work up on top. Sit on top, but you should be able to read without having actually any lines on it. So that's how it looks. And then, obviously there's the lines. So I usually do the lines in a couple of different sets. There's one where it's like the actual line work, and then there's the heavier lines and kind of fill in blacks. So it's kind of a non-destructive approach. So, but each of these has a different layer effect. So the shadow layer if we go back to that, it is set to multiply. So if you look at that, it's set to multiply, and so it'll leave things transparent, but also add darkness to them. And I usually have the opacity down a little bit too, depending on what I'm doing. And then like the light layer right here, the main light layer is a screen setting. So it adds a lot of brightness to the surface. And then the reflected light is usually an overlay layer. And then sometimes if I'm going for a more painted look, I'll add another shadow layer that's the ambient occlusion layer, which I don't have on here, but all that sits on top of the flats. And so again, like I said, it should read generally, even if it doesn't have any color or lines to it.
Nice.
So so I have like a specific set of layers that I like to use on top for the finished rendering.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. We had a question directly about the app. We actually don't have a Discord channel for Infinite Painter, but we do have a community, an online community. If you go to our website, I'll post it here in the chat, infinitestudio.art. You can learn more about kind of the projects we're working on, as well as talk with other users of the app and share information. So I'm just going to post it here. But yeah, we try to be as active as possible through that, or on our Instagram. You can always reach out through that as well.
Yeah, you're posting a ton of stuff on there all the time. So, and sharing users' pictures that you spot.
Yeah, always. Yeah, if you guys, I mean, this is actually how we found you. Is yeah, you were tagging a few of your ship designs in with Infinite Painter, and just super impressed. So, if you tag us, and yeah, we'd love to reach out and connect with you guys. So we had another question here. It said, how do you maintain the shape design during designing phase? Any tips on repetition?
Well, again, so a lot of people talk about shape language, which is where you kind of repeat elements. So if things are based on triangles, this one's got kind of a long curve. So as long as it's mostly kind of sticking with those long curves following the contours of the surface, it should kind of keep with itself. And then, some sparing areas like in the front here, or some holes and things that show off interior structures, then it should definitely keep with it. But in terms of shape language, that goes back to your thumbnail. And so if you kind of set that up and you just stick with that, for the most part, it should work okay. So I've still got my, my thumbnail under here. And so I know it's kind of got these long sweeping curves through most of it, with a few rough parts sticking out. And so that should keep it within any kind of design bounds that I've set for myself.
Nice.
If I took this and all of a sudden I put a big block on top of here, that would probably that would break its structure, maybe, especially if it was squared off. Now that wouldn't make any sense necessarily. Yeah. Or if I suddenly started growing a tree out of the middle of it.
We had another question here. I think I can answer this one because I think it's more directed towards the capabilities of the app. But it says, I have a bunch of pencil/pen sketches of ships. Is it easy to import? So this is actually going to be one of the focuses on our 1 o'clock talk on one feature that's special to our app called line art mode. It's a special blend mode that will basically remove any of the white that is in your line work, and allow you to kind of lift that sketch up into just pure black on transparent paper. So yeah, be sure to tune in. It's gonna be a fun talk, and it'll show you how you can do that. Because what I've seen a lot of people do is they use multiply blend mode on top of an opaque layer. But one of the issues with that is that then you're restricted to, a fully opaque design. And you also can't, create your line work across multiple layers, which you can do with our line art mode. So, yep.
This is an example where you got to actually know a little bit about perspective. So I can't use the grid because this is at an angle inside of the grid. So
Oh, nice.
you have to kind of know that it's going to go down that way. So you have to know that the minor axis, the short side, has got to face that way. I was looking, I think, at that masking or the line art thing. I think is in the manual stuff, like what's new and all that.
Mhm.
The thing about the line art.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
Or
really
in there.
interesting because it allows you to kind of. I mean, it's just something it's hard to do in like any other program from what I know. Um, but being able to like take and have one character of line art on one layer and then having like, for example, your background scene of line art on another layer and being able to, for example, transform that character without having to redraw all that line work. So that's actually one thing you can do with these line art modes, which is pretty powerful. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting way to kind of approach that problem. We're trying to create kind of unique or features that make your life easier as artists. Yeah, and so it's just kind of a different way to approach it. So
it's great about these snapping tools. I can make that long curve without having to fight it.
nice.
Sometimes you got to overdraw the curve so you can get the more
to get that arc
subtle one.
Yeah, I'll say we do have some improvements coming to that because I think the ability to be able to kind of go from a line to an arc or a curve, like a more complex path, sometimes necessary.
Something like that.
Yeah, so you can actually do that in the app, but then it's a different definition. So it doesn't exactly maintain kind of that arc form versus that path thing. Each one has their own kind of controls.
There's an example of that overlapping. So I've got this thing down below, right? So I want to make sure it stays separate. So I need to use a thinner line and then make sure it doesn't touch at the top.
Nice.
Let's see, where did my there we are. Definitely want that to cheat with. Oh, so I got that line wrong.
Yeah, while you're drawing, one other interesting thing about that line art mode that we're going to go through is if you guys, I posted a few links to our LBX booth and goodies. One of the brush packs there has these line art brushes because if you apply the blend mode to the brushes, it creates some really interesting abilities to where you can create like super complex line work designs just using a brush, which is pretty cool. So another thing definitely worth checking out. So if you guys want to download those and play with those, like that's also a fun thing to experiment with. This is looking great.
That was fun. So I haven't done a lot of digital art in the last few months because I was so obsessed with my little car project.
Yeah, how's that going, by the way?
I haven't touched it. I was actually, I've had the semester starting and I got a little sick, and so it's just sitting out there. Now I'm all better and I'm out of food, so I need to go look at my car. But yeah, it's a lot of finishing and some tweaking to do on it. But
nice.
Too many taps. I like that you can grow the thickness of the brush stroke you just made. That's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah, so guys, what he's doing here is so he's using that snap feature where you can basically drag it out and then hold to snap it to a shape definition. And then you can actually change the brush properties like the size or the color. So he's actually using this to kind of like get a feel for what the line weight should be at that stage or with this shape.
So if you want to keep your line, but you realize you made it too skinny or too fat, you can always go back and tweak it.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like the way you're just kind of just walking through the design.
That's kind of what the setup is really great because I can detail one area or I can work on the whole big thing at once or move around, and it's just kind of all there for me. So I'm not, again, fighting my own previous mistakes or anything.
Yeah.
I definitely don't tell my prospective students about these apps. They have to do it all in pencil. So.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
man.
Laying out all the perspective space and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think like even when you have like tools, it's always good to kind of understand the principles behind something or the math or anything like that to like, I mean, sometimes you just have to problem solve, and the more you know about how to solve that, I mean, the easier it gets like on the spot.
Yeah. Well, it's like if I just relied on the grid, having something at a different angle on a surface, it's harder to do. But if I know how it's supposed to work, then I can draw that, even though I've got the grid up. If I want to draw, something inside a box, I need to be able to see and draw inside the box. I need to be able to see, what that angle can look like. So there's a 45-degree angle inside of a box. I need to be able to know, that ellipse is going to look different at that angle than it will, at this angle or that angle.
Yeah. Nice. So one question here, it says, do you ever use like this app, or I'll even say like any other type of like digital software in class? Or you mostly focus on, teaching things by hand?
So right at the moment I'm teaching online. So a lot of times when I'm going over their work, I'll be drawing in Photoshop. So I can download things from Google Drive really easy and drop it in there, grab screenshots and things like that.
Yeah.
But if we're live in class, I'm showing them with pencils and compasses and protractors and all that fun stuff. So it just depends on the circumstance, but
Nice.
but yeah, I've taught digital illustration in classes, things like that. But currently focused on traditional drawing stuff. For students who learn technology things that I don't know anything about, they're all motion designers. So they're using Houdini and Cinema 4D and all these other fancy programs.
Yeah. So there's a question here. I think that this like, I'm going to kind of reword this question just because I feel like it might be like, so it says, why do you prefer Infinite Painter over Procreate or Fresco? But I'd probably ask like, what do you prefer in relationship to Infinite Painter? Because I think there's a lot of great things with a lot of these programs.
Yeah, I haven't used Fresco in a while. I played around with it when it first came out, but haven't touched it. I was telling you earlier, like, I've been mostly disappointed with a lot of Adobe's apps. Maybe they've improved. I should go back and look at them. Like I'll use Lightroom for editing photographs or things like that because it's just the same on the phone as it is on your computer, basically.
Yeah.
And then Procreate, yeah, I like Procreate. I've used it for a long time. What I do like about, like, so one of the features I really like about Infinite Painter is just this right here. I mean, this is why I kind of started doing the line work in here. By just tapping on the shape, you can start adjusting it. And then Procreate, you have to touch a different button. And so, but they all, everything's got their pluses. So that's generally why I kind of switched over to doing line work over here, was because of that. Actually, the program I used the most, even when Procreate was around, was Art Studio. when I was doing more digital painting stuff instead of line work, but it's kind of like Photoshop on the iPad.
Yeah, I'll second that. There's a lot of solid tools out there in the mobile space for you guys to use. And
this feature right here is really what drove me over here, was using that, being able to edit these on the fly a lot more easily. It's just, anything I can do to make my life easier and simpler, this is going to be where I want to go. Gets the program out of my way, right? I'm not trying to figure out where everything is, and just right there. When I was using, I didn't even see a like look up how to do it. It just kind of happened automatically. I was like, oh, look, there's the thing. I touched it and there it was.
Nice.
So any of that kind of invisibility is just awesome. So
yeah, that's really, I think that's like kind of the sweet spot when you can get there in a program, and like the person doesn't have to think about it. The artist it's kind of just there. It just kind of makes sense. That's really the sweet spot.
Getting to that intuitive ability is just really nice. Yeah, I think that gesture features, to redraw the line, I think that's a pretty unique feature here, right, too? So I haven't noticed it other places.
Yeah, this is actually a technique that's pretty useful, guys, if you're doing any type of brush editing, to where you can kind of just like create a nice like path that because it keeps track of the pressure and the velocity and the tilt. And then you can actually just jump into the brush settings, dock them by the side, and then you can just edit those. And it'll show you kind of the live effect of
Yeah, I like I have some of these other, more expressive brushes I like too.
Nice.
Yeah, hairy brushes for textures and things like that. But yeah, for more of this kind of technical drawing, I kind of like to play around with these other brushes. But again, like love is kind of the invisibility aspect of all this stuff. So I don't have to go into the menu to change the brush size. I just have to touch the icon on the side.
So we had another question. It said, do you use custom brushes or the default ones are enough for you?
Most of the time, well, often I'll tweak the default ones a little bit. So maybe it has a little more smoothness or less, or has a size. So I've got a few custom brushes in here. So these are ones that I use pretty commonly, but I think all of these are default ones. I think I may have just gone in and tweaked them a little bit for myself. I said, like, I think I've mentioned before, like the most popular brush I often use is just like a basic round brush. And I'll often get questions about like even like the most basic brush because I guess people like it, but like even the brush I'm using right now, it's just a round brush that's 100% opacity, so it's like a pen or like a micron style technical pen. But I'll sometimes go through and make custom brushes. Like that desktop application we were talking about before. I won't complain about them too much, but like I basically use the same brushes with them that I started off with in college. And I'd almost never go into the new ones.
Oh, nice. So we had another question about if this is a technical question with Infinite Painter, but so are Photoshop brushes compatible? Not currently. This is something we're looking into adding. The brush engine is just a bit different. And so we just haven't added support yet, just because we want first to make sure that that we're accomplishing what we want to do with the brushes, and then if we can also support what other platforms are doing without totally warping what we want to do, is kind of where we want to be. But yeah, totally get the desire there, because there's a lot of Photoshop brushes out in the wild. So totally get that.
I did notice that some of the applications that do let you do that, they don't quite work the same. Like they almost are kind of the same. So it almost throws me off more if I go to use the Photoshop brushes I've imported into the other ones that do that. And they kind of work mostly the same, but it is kind of does throw me off a little bit, because there's like a little bit of a difference in the flow or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting, those small things that like they can really stand out especially if you rely on something from like day to day. But yeah, we totally get it that this is something that tweaking brushes or trying to create your own can be cumbersome for you as an artist who want to use this on a daily basis. So we're looking into that. So
we do have pretty wide gamut in here of brushes. So you got your screen tones, and you can tweak these by bringing in, I think, different images and things as well. But I mean, it'd take you a while before you ran out of brushes to test out, I think, in here.
Yeah, we definitely try to go kind of across the board with a lot of those.
And one of the things you'll often see, if you go on like YouTube and look at people that are really great digital illustrators, they'll often just like draw with a round brush. So it's not so much the brush that's doing the work for them. And that's always something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that's a robot, Anthony Jones robot pencils. One of his favorite go-to brushes is just a, hard round brush with some pressure.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of artists' best friend, is being able to just like use that, and, you don't have to worry too much about fighting with the texture. And then you can just kind of add the texture at a later stage.
It was Sparth, Nicolas Bouvier, the concept artist. He was doing stuff with the color app on, it was like a portable gaming device, some kind of Nintendo thing, I think.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of this one before.
They made an app for the phone
DS.
that never took off. Yeah, the Nintendo DS, that's right.
Yeah.
He was doing stuff on that. I mean, that's the most, that's way basic tools, right? But he was doing cool stuff with them. I think I've got them on my computer saved somewhere. So, but yeah, so I was just developing those hardcore skills. You talk to listen to like someone like Feng Zhu or Kim Jong-gi talk about their skill sets, and for them it's all about the basic fundamentals. How do you draw?
Yeah,
and the tool will then augment that, but really that's all that really matters in the end, is can you draw, can you paint, can you come up with ideas?
Yeah, I think so. We had another talk yesterday with Tiffany Ming. She was doing thumbnails, and she emphasized like a lot of it's about quantity over quality, especially when you're trying to build up those fundamentals. And I think that also is just really important. The more you can kind of knock out and like problem solve, it'll help you in the long run. We had a nice compliment come in, and it said, I feel like I blink, the details appear. I'm so impressed by this process. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the thing is, like I said, this just makes things easy. So if you just kind of take things step by step, if you have a process to work with, it just makes everything really easy to do. It doesn't mean you won't run into problems, but it gives you opportunities to solve them, because where you're at. It's like I tell my students, I teach to a process because it gives them a map. And that was one of the first things I really learned getting into the professional world. It wasn't something I was taught so much in school, but one of the things I figured out pretty quick was that if you have a process for doing something, you get it done a lot faster.
Yeah.
And you're not stuck to it necessarily, because it's like a map, and so you can take detours if you want, but you know where they're going. It's like I'm working with the senior motion designers that are going to be graduating into the year, theoretically. They get out of my class alive. And I'm not a motion designer, but I'm just there kind of as an art director for their senior projects. But they're having to keep timesheets for the stuff they're working on. And so it kind of shows them how long it takes them to do things and how that affects their workflow and all that fun stuff. So it's they've been quite shocked. Oh, I spent 36 hours on my project this week, or I spent 5 hours. I'm like, well, that's why it's not so great.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, being able to kind of see how long things take you and having a process for all of that just makes a really big difference for, you know, your ability to get things done, which also, you know, amps up your confidence. A lot of artists complain, you know, that they're, especially young artists, you know, they have, you know, they're afraid that they're going to mess things up, and yeah, they will, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So that's just part of the learning process. But as you're doing that, you'll see, oh, you know, that didn't work out so well for me, so maybe I ought to try something else. And you develop process skills with that, which again, you know, makes it just so much easier to do everything. I think,
Nice.
anyway.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally, that makes a lot of sense. Just want to say I appreciate all the people who are sticking around.
I
You
hope
know,
you're
if you guys
enjoying
have
it.
more questions, like feel free to throw them out. You know, I'm kind of just mesmerized here, enjoying the process.
And if they want to see more of these, like I've got time lapses for ones I was doing, I guess it was like 1.5 years ago originally, when I was doing a whole bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, those are awesome.
Scroll back to my feed, I was doing a whole series of them. And one thing I do want to be careful with when I'm working with this stuff is to not make it look too technical. So I will kind of break the perspective a little bit, or, you know, have some uneven lines so it feels more like it's hand drawn.
Nice.
So I can take this line right here, and come back with the eraser and, you know, break it up a little bit, just so it's, you know, not too clean. Like I like a clean drawing, but you know, if you make it too even, sometimes it'll be a little boring. So chop back into things or leave holes.
Nice. We had one comment here. This is related to Infinite Painter. So yeah, basically it says that they feel like they're missing the ability to tap the pencil to quickly switch between the eraser and the brush. Yeah, totally get that. So we are in the process of kind of improving the ability to, you know, create custom combinations like that for you guys. So I would just stay tuned, like check out our Instagram for new updates. We're right now, we're working really heavily on the Android version to finish it up and bring it in line with the iOS version. So to bring it to 7.0. So a lot of big work going there, but we haven't forgot about the iOS version. We have a lot of huge things coming, so just stay tuned. One thing you can do is you can, if you want to, you can actually go in the settings. And we do have a feature where if you turn the finger option to eraser, then if you hold your finger down anywhere on the screen, it acts like a modifier. And so you can actually erase with the Apple Pencil and your finger on the screen. Or if you lift up, then you can just use your brush. So
Just like that.
Yep. And so the finger almost becomes like an alt key in Photoshop, or, you know, in other programs like Photoshop and things. So
Yeah,
that's
I
one
draw a dark
shortcut.
line, and then I put down my thumb. Now I got an eraser. It's the same pen too, right? Same size.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's one quick shortcut if you're interested.
So usually my thumb is like right over there by the interface anyway. So I just, you know, pop it up and down.
Nice.
Does it have right left-handed mode it's on here, or is it?
So it's actually, yeah, anywhere on the screen. So like if you're a left-handed user, you know, artist, and then you're you could basically hold it anywhere on the screen. It's wherever it's pretty comfortable for you. Yep.
Okay, good. I'm right-handed, so it doesn't really affect me, but I spent my childhood watching my mom write checks upside down. She's left-handed.
yeah, I'll also make a note as well is if anyone is left-handed and has any special requests as far as the interface goes, we're super open to feedback. We want to make it as accessible as possible for all artists. So.
Now, speaking of that, so the prices on these apps are just so ridiculously low. Like getting Photoshop costs you $60 a month.
Yeah.
So you guys are practically giving this stuff away. I think even like, was it the Manga Studio, whatever that app's called? It's on desktops. They require a Clip Studio. I think they require a monthly subscription on the iPad. I was like, no way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty amazing how affordable a lot of this software is. I mean, when you compare it to especially physical like things that you would get if you were a painter and you had to buy like oil paint and brushes.
Yeah, just one of these technical pens is like, $3 or something like that by itself.
Yeah.
Actual Micron. Or, Copic markers. Those things are expensive. And they have fumes. I'm curious, is there a way to tell how zoomed in you are? Is there like a zoom percentage thing?
So there's not, like, actually that's a good question. We do actually have a navigator in the tools at the very bottom. If you open up that tools menu, and it'll actually show where you are in relationship to the canvas. One other thing you can do is you can actually double tap that if you want to like flip it. So if you want to like check the proportions, and if you're working in color, there's another little feature. This is unrelated to the zoom aspect that you're asking, but you can actually turn it black and white. So if you're like doing a value study, you can do your value study while you're actually painting in color with the navigator. So that's one other feature that might be helpful. But as far as zoom percentage, we don't have that in there yet.
Okay, I haven't really seen that too often in the app, so I was just wondering if maybe I was missing.
Yeah,
something.
no, it's great feedback.
And I'm doing this, like I said, everyone, I'm doing this on the original iPad, so iPad Pro. So this isn't even like the fancier upgraded ones. Sadly enough, they're actually the ones I did most of the other ships and stuff on. I broke the screen, just the smaller iPad Pro.
Oh no!
The 9-inch one. It's only those devices I've ever broken, and I just kind of bumped it with my hip on the edge of a counter.
Oh man, yeah, that's rough.
The face of it's just all spider webs. Works though, but I just use it for reading comics now.
Nice. Yeah, I've gotten into the whole Saga series lately.
Hopefully she'll finish that because it's been a while since they put out anything new.
Yeah, I think I'm only on.
It's been like 3 years.
Oh wow! Yeah, I hope they do finish it. I thought it was like really enjoyable so far, but I'm only on I think volume 2 of their the compilation. So
one I really like is the Low series by Rick Remender. That one just finished up.
Okay, I'll check that out. So Low.
Yeah, it's called Low. It's about people living under the ocean. He kind of does like a little philosophical thing with these. So it's like, how bad can things get? And so the start of it's kind of where these underwater civilizations where people have gone to hide because the sun is gradually going supernova. And so they've gone underwater to hide from the radiation of the sun. But now that's been, hundreds or thousands of years, and these cities are starting to fall apart.
Oh, that's that's an interesting concept.
And then he has another one that I really like that's finishing up soon, which is Deadly Class. And it's kind of like Harry Potter, but for assassins.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
They did one season of a TV series, but didn't quite have the same punch level as the comic has.
Huh,
But that's
interesting.
coming to a set kind of in the late mid late 80s. And so it's about a kid who goes in there. Most of the people in there are kind of from crime families. So they're like the children of crime bosses, and he's not.
Oh, that's cool. So do they all have like different types of skill, or is it just
Yeah, so
like,
they all come from different parts of the world. So there's like the Mexican mafia, there's the Japanese, the Chinese, the Russians, different Americans, the Italians, etc.
oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. It sounds fun.
The artwork's kind of very cool style. So it's not your typical stuff. But
Yeah, I always, oh, good.
yeah, I like to get the library editions for those things, those big giant books.
Nice.
And they said with the low ones, this is the last time they're printing the first library edition. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll check that out. Definitely. Yeah, it sounds cool. That sounds like I always appreciate I always appreciate when they can balance like good story and a good world and characters, but also with the art form too. Cause like with Saga and stuff like that is like, it's kind of rough, but it gets the story across. Like,
yeah, like it's really simple in Saga. It's like interesting because it's like there's a lot of empty space in there.
yeah. And then
And
but then when you look at like some of these other, graphic novels, comics, mangas, it's like, I don't know, it's such an interesting balance too, where like some of them are a lot more complicated, like artwork wise. But yeah, it's cool how you have to kind of make that decision and what in both of them can definitely work depending on like what you're trying to achieve.
yeah, like the low book, it's done. Artist is Greg Tocchini. I think he's actually Italian. That's probably like however they say Greg in
Okay. Yeah.
Italian. But he was tons of detail, but it's also very sketchy and loose, which I really like.
Nice.
Um,
We had one other question here. It said, do you teach small one-off classes for somebody who is just a hobby artist?
I have in the past. I haven't in the last year or so. But if people are interested in that, do have a tutorial site. And if you can get on the mailing list over there, if I go back to that, I'll announce that through that. And the tutorial site's myartprofessor.com. So easy.
Oh, nice. I'll post it on the chat for everyone.
Easy enough to remember. But there's a lot of like perspective drawing stuff in there right now. I've got some figure drawing stuff that I want to put up. But actually taking a lot of my the videos that I've done for my students over the last year due to COVID and converting them into kind of self-study courses over there.
Oh, nice.
And it's really cheap right now, so it's like $6 a month. So
Yeah, $6 a month. That's super cheap.
and there's just a few courses, so that's why the price is so low. Once there's more, I'll increase it. But the people that get in now get to keep that price.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the goal there is actually to set it up so you can actually go eventually, build up those basic skills, but also put together a portfolio and then know how to shop that around. So it's a little bit different than other teaching sites where they have really great courses by really amazing artists, but it's not really geared to kind of take you from not knowing anything to knowing everything. Like I subscribe to Schoolism. I think they have really amazing courses on there and really great artists. And of course, she's the one, Bobby Chu's the one put this whole light box thing together.
Yeah. Yeah, big thanks to Bobby Chu for that.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to meet artists and just connect. Yeah, so we had another comment in the thing. It said, gotta say, loving this stream. Can't wait to play with these tools. Two things I can draw forever. It's spaceships and dinosaurs. Gotta combine those. That'd be awesome.
Well, I was looking at, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I was showing my students how they can use copy work to increase their skills yesterday. And we were looking at Calvin and Hobbes, and there's that famous Sunday strip he did of Tyrannosaurs and F-16s.
Oh, nice.
Which is great. There's just Tyrannosaurus Rexes with, goggles and helmets on flying
Nice.
F-16s.
This actually, yeah, I guess this brings up an interesting question is, I've seen this mashup, especially a lot in like manga and such, where you'll take some concept that's kind of unrelated and then you'll kind of just bash it in with like another concept. Do you ever like find inspiration by like taking, for example, dinosaurs, or I think one of your like thumbnail sketches here looked almost like a shark, right? Do you ever like use different concepts to kind of build these ships or other elements that you're working on?
Sometimes, yeah, it depends on kind of what it's for. Because you have to be careful if it's too explicit, so it doesn't work with what they want.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want something like super aggressive, like that, using an aggressive animal can be a really helpful way of organizing things. Or you look at with that game Horizon Zero Dawn with their mixture of different animals and robots. So especially if it's going to play a role. So it's kind of like a shark is really great for things that are going to be really aggressive. I think I was actually thinking like a lamprey or something with this originally.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't think I named that in my head, but I remember kind of seeing it when I was kind of doing the initial drawing.
That's cool.
But yeah, there's always a possibility. Though I do find like the anime thing kind of bothers me once in a while. Like I was watching Evangelion series. Why is there a chameleon hanging out with Rapunzel?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's super interesting. Sometimes it can work, and sometimes it can just, like as you said, stick out, kind of like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I mean, I know why they do it, but for merchandising opportunities. But like if they're telling a story of like a Northern European theme, but they've got a chameleon hanging out, and he would not do so well in that tower in the wintertime.
Yeah. So true. So true.
The chicken in Moana made more sense because they'd have chickens.
Nice. Yeah, I totally get that. I really like. Yeah, I like that chicken in that one. I thought it was a good little, especially being on the raft. There's only so much you can do with such limited characters. It adds just an element that I think helps. But yeah, it's definitely it's a thin line, like you were saying. So we had a question, and I think this is kind of approached towards the beginning of the talk, and but it said, how do you know which kind of perspective to use and set it up correctly?
Yeah, so for me, like with these ships, I like to use the 3-point perspective as kind of the show-off shot. So I want to look at it, I want people to see different sides of it, and it also just makes it a little bit more dynamic than a 2-point perspective shot. So it kind of, because it puts you in a different place. But if you're trying to show the viewer's point of view, and that can affect the different kinds of perspective you use. So like if you want to show a normal, like a long lens or a standard lens shot, that's where you'd want to use 2-point perspective or 1-point perspective. So it kind of situates the camera or the viewer's point of view in the shot in kind of a regular way, like you're standing on a road or you're out in front of something.
Yeah.
Then that's what you want those for. And but then again, if you want to put the viewer like really deep into the situation, then that's where maybe you pull out the fisheye lens, the curvilinear perspective.
Yeah, I've seen some cool
close shots.
Yeah, I've seen some really cool things, like Scott Robertson. We mentioned him earlier, but some of the stuff, vehicle designs he's done with like curvilinear, just even subtly, it can be a really powerful effect. Yeah, and especially with vehicle designs or even spaceship designs, definitely.
And so that's a lot what drives those shots. And then like if you go look at the portfolio of little ships I've made, kind of use 3-point perspective for all of them, and that way they kind of also work as a portfolio unit.
Yeah, that makes
sense. If I kept
sense.
swapping perspectives on them all the time, it would it would kind of break that portfolio a bit. So
I guess
that
this,
can be another reason too, just consistency.
yeah, definitely. I guess this brings up another question because I feel like I've seen, a lot of artists coming into perspective kind of struggle with the extremes of perspective.
Hmm.
Like, is there a way that, like, I mean, is there a way you kind of approach that, or any recommendation you have about that? Is like, maybe don't go too extreme and just like, be a little subtle with it, or like, how would you kind of think about that?
Well, like the extremes usually have to do with a style issue, and I think part of it is there's all the mechanics in perspective, and if you're unaware of them, then that's where the things start to break down. So there's the idea of what's called the cone of vision, which is the range in which things in drawing in perspective stay in proportion to each other.
Hmm.
As you start to get outside of the edge of that cone, things start to stretch out in weird ways that you didn't originally intend. But again, it's a stylistic thing too, because a lot of times people are working off of like 3D renders and block outs and things like that. And you'll see that photo distortion in there of the wide lens effect, which is
Yeah.
fine. But a lot of times if you don't know that's there, then you're not really taking advantage of it. You're just kind of doing it by default. But if you can kind of be aware of that cone of vision, then you know to stay within like a smaller space, and it avoids a lot of that distortion. But if you don't know about it, then you don't really know to compensate for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes a
that's
lot of sense.
usually where they bump into issues, is they just don't know that they're reaching this outside edge. They know they're working with the vanishing points and they're doing a good job with that, but they don't realize that they're kind of breaking things a little bit. It's like, like there's that iPad artist, Nikolai Lockertson. He likes to use really distorted perspective, and it's
Mhm.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Nobody complains because it looks really great.
Nice.
But actually had him do Zoom, Skype into a class once, a long time ago.
Oh, nice. Another question here. Do you typically use the perspective guides for everything, or when do you decide to use them?
I normally jump in and start using them once I've kind of got my rough idea down. So we were looking before at my thumbnails. So if that's someone who's come in after we started, if I kind of go down here and turn those back on, I didn't have the perspective guide on when I did these. And I generally know how to rough sketch things into perspective. And so I'm confident with that because I use those forms to sketch with, and I kind of see what's going on with them pretty easily. But what I'll want to do is I want to make things a little bit better. And so that's when I take my thumbnail and I'll expand it up in size and then throw on this, and then I can move things around so it just fits a little bit better with the actual perspective. And so you can see how it's changed. And so suddenly, it feels a little more natural or precise to what it's supposed to be.
Nice. Yeah. And I'll add too, you had a really good saying at the very beginning, especially when setting up that perspective grid, is, think inside the box. So if you can take your design and kind of cage it inside of a cube, then you just want to really match up that cube in perspective. So if you take like a certain element, for example, the wing, or even like the front of the ship, and you were just to kind of box it in, then that box right there is going to be like, what is going to define that perspective when you're setting up your guides, if that helps.
It just makes like we were looking before at finding the center.
Yeah.
And being able to see that is just really, really helpful. And like I say, if you go look at like Scott Robertson or anyone that does like the marker drawings, you'll see them set up certain elements like this. They have different shorthands for it, but they'll set up little perspective lines, and that helps them keep things boxed up in perspective properly.
I think it's also cool how you've put a lot of focus towards the front of the ship with the details, and the fact that like some of the panels are connected there. but then that kind of focus falls off as you're kind of walking down the ship, and you're like doing it a little more sparingly, and you're also not connecting as much. And
That's
yeah,
the atmospheric perspective, right?
yeah, that's really cool. I like the way that, you know, those decisions in this is great. Are you going to make that kind of dome in the front glass? I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curious. Nice. I can already kind of like foresee like that similar kind of glass that you had in that final design you did with us. That's just
Yeah.
really cool.
I like to have like see-through things on these ships. And it's
Yeah.
obviously not going to be practical for, you know, every single type of, you know, product, but and for my own, I like to have, you know, spots where you can really see through what's going on, so it kind of opens up space. Also gives like a good sense of scale, so you can show where the cockpit is and what's going on inside of it a little bit. Then
Yeah, that's awesome.
kind of establishes its size. I don't know how much of a chair I can fit in there though, at that angle.
Oh, that's cool. So is that going to be the cockpit?
That's what I was saying, is put a little
That's
chair
awesome.
here with some of the little panels and things, but it's a really tiny space, so I don't know how much I'll be able to put in there.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's so cool.
But kind of similar to what I was doing with that one I did for you that time.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's such a great idea. I can just imagine like being the pilot in that, and all you see is just space in front of you. That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like I would be so intimidated approaching this kind of transparent glass region in a design. But I like seeing your layer setup in the finished one. It's, I don't know, it feels like it's a lot more approachable. You know, I think that's just awesome being able to kind of see that.
Yeah, hand rendering that would be terrible. It would be a lot of work, but kind of just
Yeah,
having some layers and that you use for all the lighting, it just makes it really fast and easy.
yeah.
I'm not sure how this ship would land.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. I imagine like maybe you know, they have these like clamps as like a clamped hanger, and like it just like kind of, you know, clamps into the wings or something of that nature. And
Yeah,
then
we definitely have to have another solution.
yeah, yeah, I totally see that. It's interesting when you kind of think about the mechanics of things, and it's like, oh man, I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, well, that's part of the, you know, when if they were, you know, giving you this as like a regular project, so well, it's got to dock with the ship a certain way, or it has to show how it lands a certain way, so you have to factor that in
Yeah,
designing. And so they probably would tell me to figure that out. And maybe there's like little feet or something, but yeah, maybe some kind of docking.
or maybe it never touches the grounds. I like that.
Never lands.
Nice. I'm loving this. Do you ever feel like there's a point where, you know, there's obviously a line where too much detail versus like you feel like you're going a little bit too much into it and things. I don't think it's here, obviously, but do you ever feel like, is that just something from experience you kind of learn as far as like where that line is, or like when do you kind of define like, you know, hey, I should just go ahead and start rendering and things?
Usually I'll take a break. So if I start
Yeah.
feeling a little like if something's getting to be too much or it's too distracting, I'll take a break and come back. And if it's, you know, if I find myself like looking right here and not right there, then I know I need to tweak something.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, or you can even do the thing, you know, where you flip it upside down or you mirror it, and you can look at it and say, you know, where am I really looking here? And so if I'm still not happy with that, or if it feels like something feels off, and from that point of view, then I'll go back and edit.
That makes a lot of sense. So trying to like keep your focus in mind, and when you feel like you're fighting that focus, then maybe it's time to kind of like step away and you know, get fresh eyes on it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was even telling my students that yesterday because they have to do this drawing over the weekend. And I told them it's a good idea to sit down and do most of it right now, but you want to sleep on it before you turn it in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like so many things, even like things that I'm working on in the app and everything. It's, at the time it's like, oh, this is like the way to do it. But then when I sleep on it, it's like, I don't know, I see it in a whole different light, and it kind of clicks a bit. And so I think that
suddenly, like,
refinement
some solution pops up and you're like, oh, that's way better than what I was thinking originally.
Yeah, that ability to allow things to kind of tumble. I mean, that's going to generate that polish. I totally agree with that. That's a great idea. And I like the thing with the focus too. I think that makes a lot of sense, being able to try to retain the focus throughout.
Yeah, the other thing is having people that have good design look at what you're working on. So I have certain friends that I'll send things to and say, what am I missing here? What do you think? Especially on the personal stuff. Obviously, if it's like under like an NDA or something, I can't do that. But
yeah,
kind of knowing what they think or seeing how they're experiencing what I'm doing can help me make better decisions. Like if they get confused by what they're looking at, that means I've got some work to do.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, being open to others, like that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely like if people are, especially the young artists, they should definitely try and join art communities online where they can share what they're working on and get feedback.
Yeah.
Trick is just not taking it personally and then learning to see what people's responses actually mean. So they might tell you to do something, it could be the wrong thing to do, but their response saying something doesn't make any sense or they don't understand what's happening or what your intent was means that you haven't communicated that yet.
Yeah.
And so even if it's not necessarily doing what they said to do, it's learning to understand what their responses mean about what you want to do.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, coming from a whole different kind of background, like developing, an app, it's, all sorts of user feedback come in, and it's trying to kind of filter through like what the message is behind it. And it's not always so direct. And and being open to like, to that type of like criticism and things like that is, it's really important for things to develop.
Yeah, I can imagine because people, they have you have one intent with the user experience and the interface, and then other people are like, using it in crazy ways or things you didn't expect, or have certain expectations that you were trying to say, oh, this is actually going to be easier, and they haven't tried it yet. So it means they don't see it just yet for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like I have to question, discoverability and things like that. Am I communicating this in the way that I should? But yeah, this totally applies in that as well. And yeah, but I love how this is forming. This is just awesome. Yeah, I think we have a few people here, but we're not much in the chat. So I guess whenever you want to wrap it up, like this has been such a great experience.
Yeah, we can do that.
Cool.
Yeah, probably sit down and color this later.
Oh yeah. So if you post it on Instagram, we'll definitely repost. This is so awesome. I love this.
Yeah, definitely having fun. So
yeah, it's been good. It's been really good talking to you too. And thank you so much for doing this with us. This has been awesome. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, hopefully it was worthwhile for everybody that came in.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys a little bit later today throughout some of the other events. So take care.
Bye.